Hugo Pacheco there in Beirut. Thanks very much. We're going to take a short break. When we're back in a moment or two, I have all the latest from the Middle East and the rest of today's headlines. See you in a bit.
Now on BBC News, the biggest African and international news stories. Focus on Africa.
Live from Nairobi, this is Focus on Africa on BBC News. Our top stories. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa expected to make his way to Cairo in the coming hours to attend a peace summit on the Israeli-Gaza conflict. Deposed Nigerian President Mohamed Bazoum's lawyers refute claims that he and his family attempted to escape from house arrest, as claimed by the military junta. Also in the program, turning the lights off. Is outsourcing power from commercial entities the way to go for African countries, or is it a danger to their territorial sovereignty? We explore this on the program. Well, many thanks for joining us. You're watching Focus on Africa. I'm Waihiga Mwaura. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa will attend a peace summit in Cairo on Saturday on how to bring an end to the Israeli-Gaza conflict. The talks are set to cover the escalation of the conflict, the urgent need for humanitarian support, and to make a call for the resumption of the peace process. The South African president has expressed deep concern regarding the continued conflict that has engulfed the Gaza Strip. Now, meanwhile, the UN Secretary General has made an impassioned appeal for aid trucks on the Egyptian border to be allowed into Gaza immediately. Now, they remain stuck at the border crossing point with Egypt. Antonio Guterres described the lorries as a matter of life and death for civilians in Gaza. He also said that fuel was needed to pump water and generate electricity. Israel has refused to allow that. It's so that only 20 trucks will be allowed to cross initially once an agreement is reached. Aid agencies have described this situation inside Gaza as beyond catastrophic, a hellhole. Hospitals running out of medicine and fuel for their generators. Food supplies are very low. Gaza's health ministry says more than 4,100 people have been killed. And overnight, a Greek Orthodox church was hit. At least 18 people are said to have been killed and dozens more wounded. The Israeli Defense Force have said that they had targeted militants nearby. Tom Bateman has more in this report. Well, protests have been held worldwide. In South Africa, the African National Congress Party and its members marched to the Israeli embassy in Pretoria in solidarity with Palestine. Mr. Ramaphosa and his party have been vocal in its support of the ongoing conflict in Israel. Anger continues to build in many Arab capitals. These, the pictures from Egypt. After Friday prayers, a day before, President Sisi will be hosting a summit with leaders from around the world. And in Somalia, hundreds of demonstrators have turned up in the country's capital, Mogadishu, to march in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. Meanwhile, in the past few hours, the Israeli military has given an update on the hostage situation, saying 20 of them are children, and between 10 and 20 are over 60. They said most of the more than 200 hostages were alive. More than 1,400 Israelis were killed in the Hamas attacks nearly 2 weeks ago. Well, let's now switch gears and take you to Niger, where lawyers who say that they represent deposed Nigerian President Mohamed Bazoum have rejected allegations made by the ruling junta that Mr. Bazoum and his family attempted to escape detention on Thursday. The Bazooms have been under house arrest since members of the Presidential Guard seized power in a coup on the 26th of July. The junta had claimed that Bazoum and his family planned to drive to the northern outskirts of the capital Niamey, where 2 helicopters owned by an unnamed foreign power would take them to neighboring Nigeria. West and Central Africa has seen 8 coups since 2020. Let's now take a look at what happened to other deposed presidents during this period. Guinea's Alpha Condé, who was overthrown in September 2021, spent 8 months under house arrest. Now, that's the longest a president has spent under detention since 2020. Burkina Faso's President Roch Kabore, who was overthrown in January 2022, was allowed back to his residence in the capital, Ouagadougou, after 3 months in detention. And most recently, Gabon's President Ali Bongo, who was toppled just 2 months ago, was released from house arrest a week later and moved to his private residence in Libreville after 1 week. The junta announced that Bongo is free to leave the country on medical grounds. Well, this is something we want to talk a bit more about, and we can get context now from Oluwole Ojewale, who's a regional analyst for Central Africa at the Institute for Security Studies. Oluwole, thanks for speaking with Focus. Just walk us through, what else are we hearing about President Bazoum's condition, and why has it taken so long for the junta to allow the president to leave the palace? Well, that's a situation we'll continue to monitor closely and give updates as and when we get them. Oluwole Ojewale, thanks for speaking with us, a regional analyst for Central Africa at the Institute for Security Studies. Meanwhile, lots more lined up. Here's what's still to come. From borrowing shoes to breaking world records. We meet Kenya's Kelvin Kiptum, who ran an awe-inspiring world record and is now being labeled the new marathon king. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Focus on Africa. As African countries continue with their pursuit of development and industrialization, power remains a vital component of this journey. However, over 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa still lack access to electricity and power supply on the continent, and this is marked by frequent cuts as demand outweighs supply. African governments have now turned to commercial entities to bridge this gap, but questions arise on whether these deals put their sovereignty at risk. Earlier on, I sought to find out how one particular solution, floating plants, work and their impact on countries like Guinea-Bissau. Well, let's stay on this subject for a few more minutes. We are now joined by Dr. Theo Achiampong, an economist and risk analyst, connecting with us from Aberdeen, Scotland. Dr. Theo, thanks for speaking with us. What's the nature of the contracts that a company like Car Powership would sign with an African country? Dr. Theo, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for your insights. Dr. Theo Achiampong, economist and risk analyst. Elsewhere, 5 years ago, when Kenya's Kelvin Kiptum ran his first big local competition, he did it in borrowed sneakers because he couldn't afford a pair of his own. At this year's Chicago Marathon, the 23-year-old wore the latest edition in the range of super shoes for marathons as he ran an awe-inspiring world record. BBC Sport Africa's Celestine Caronet now reports. Thanks for watching. I'm Waihiga Mwaura. Goodbye.
Hello there. Across the northeast of the United States and eastern areas of Canada, low pressure is going to be bringing